very intentional about changing the conversation about the dignity of work and the dignity and the honor of family formation through work, and how the younger generation, when they see their parents work, how they're incentivized to work. And that, you know, America is not a welfare state, but America was built on small business. It was built on entrepreneurship. And so as it pertains to housing, we're being very focused on that, and even some that receive HUD funding to make sure, like our Section 3, when you receive HUD funding, that you are given opportunities for the most vulnerable Americans that you serve to have work, to have opportunities to work, to have work requirements. Work requirements are not a bad word. That's a great word. Time limits is a great word. To incentivize people, able-bodied, able-minded people to work. And I believe that we are, under your leadership, sir, changing that conversation in America to where working is an honorable thing. And Secretary Wright talked about revitalization. Revitalization means to bring new life. And I believe we're bringing new life to America, Mr. President, through work and through all the jobs that people are doing around this table. And with the One Big Beautiful Bill, the most extensive tax break in American history, opportunity zones are now made permanent. And you know how passionate I am, and you are too, sir, about opportunity zones. And so this will allow us to continue to build affordable housing around our country. And Mr. Vice President, I'm coming your way. I'm coming to Columbus later this week, and to see how we can continue to build affordable housing in our country with opportunity zones. And you know, 1 million people, Mr. President, were lifted out of poverty because of opportunity zones. $90 billion of private money was invested in opportunity zones, urban, tribal, and now that they've been made permanent, we're looking for millions more to be lifted out of poverty, $100 billion to be invested, hundreds of thousands of jobs to be created, hundreds of thousands of units of housing to come online. And so, sir, I sit here very excited about the future of this country. I'm very proud to be at this table, humbled to do so. And HUD, we're on a good path. So thank you for all your support and helping us, sir.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
And I want to give credit to Tim Scott, great senator from a place called South Carolina that we love, right? And Tim really came up with opportunity zones, and we did a good job of working with him, and together we created something that nobody speaks of very much, but it's probably the most successful thing that's ever been done of its kind. It's been amazing. So Tim Scott deserves a lot of credit for that. Thank you. Thank you. So Russell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I get the opportunity to go hand by hand with all of these people as they move their deregs through the Office of Management and Budget. And I wanted to zoom out for a second. In the first term, you gave us a goal of 2 for 1. And then we outperformed it through your leadership. We came in at around 5.5, 6 for 1. And then as you're running for your second term, you put out a goal that when you put it out, I was thinking to myself, that's going to be a pretty ambitious goal. You said 10 for 1. Well, where we are right now, in just 1 month, in 1 year, basically 8 months, we are at 245 deregulatory initiatives planned by these agencies. That comes out to 30 for 1. So we are making incredible strides, and you know, as you're focused on the details of each one, I mean, these aren't small things. Endangerment finding is one of the most deregulatory things we've in the history of this country. NEPA reform, incredibly deregulatory. WOTUS just came in, which is Waters of the United States. So every single one of these agencies is doing incredible work when it comes to deregulatory, and when you add that to the work being done to get us going on energy, reduce spending, we're going to lower costs for the American people, we're going to be able to have innovative jobs and get them back to work. So thank you for your leadership, Mr. President.
Thank you. Great job, Russell. Appreciate it. John, central casting, I call him. He's central.
Well, Mr. President, I'm grateful to be with everyone today, and as we're talking about jobs and workforce at CIA, consistent with your directives to all of us, we've embraced your mantra for a leaner, more effective, more efficient workforce. But at CIA, Mr. President, we had an additional challenge because, as you know, at times, our workforce had been misdirected. Its focus put on political narratives, some that even worked against you and always worked against the American people.
I heard about that.
But under your leadership and your direction, we have been focused back on the core mission of what CIA is supposed to be doing, which is to provide you and this entire incredible team around the table with a decisive strategic advantage in accomplishing your goals. And your success in that regard, the examples are clear and many. With regard to Iran, everyone knows that our DoD partners executed that mission flawlessly. But flawless military operations are subject to flawless intelligence. And as you know, Mr. President, CIA was the backbone in terms of its intelligence operations in providing that flawless execution that allowed you and your team to obliterate Iranian nuclear facilities and set back a nuclear program by years. Likewise, with regard to your ability to prevent and to preempt wars between India and Pakistan, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, in all those cases, CIA intelligence supported you and your entire team in making that possible. It's not just you, it's folks around this table, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lucknick, Trade Representative Greer, and their great successful negotiations on trade and tariffs, again, was a CIA workforce working to enable them to accomplish your goals. So as we roll into Labor Day, I tell you that the CIA workforce at the Trump CIA is grateful to be focused on what it's supposed to be, which is helping you prevent and end wars and to make America safer.
Thank you very much. You've been really fantastic, but I'm not surprised. I've known John a long time. I'm not surprised at all. Thank you very much. Steve, please.
Mr. President, working for this government, for you, is the greatest honor of my life. I tell it to everybody, and I really do feel that way, and I thank you, because it's a privilege to go out there and represent you in your humanitarian effort, in your goals of solving conflicts all over the world. I think there were actually more than 7 conflicts that you've put to bed in the last 8 months. And I hear these, I travel all over the world. In Hostage Square, they talk about you reverentially. It's really quite amazing. I sometimes wish that I had a cam recorder with me and I could put you right there as I listen to it. I was in Gaza, the first American diplomat, on your behalf, and as we delivered food and aid pursuant to your new aid initiative, pushed forth by your great Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who it is a privilege for me to work alongside. The people were applauding you. The signs were up. I mean, these are people who I just don't think you get the proper credit for it all. We are negotiating multiple entries into the Abraham Peace Accords because of your vision. Azerbaijan, all these different conflicts that we're out there on your behalf on, these are people who have never really seen the world change in this way. Peace through strength really, really works. Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Israel, Hamas, we're having meetings all this week on all 3 of those conflicts, and we hope to settle them before the end of this year. Your team is nothing short of incredible. And there's only one thing I wish for, that noble committee finally gets its act together and realizes that you are the single finest candidate since the this Nobel Award was ever talked about to receive that reward. Beyond your success is game-changing out in the world today. And I hope everybody one day wakes up and realizes that.
Thank you, Steve. Jamison, please.
Mr. President, I like to think of Labor Day as the Trump Trade Policy Day, because everyone around this table and everyone listening knows that one of the major reasons why American workers and organized labor voted for you is because of your trade policy and the policies you've had and advocated for 40 years or more. You have reset global trade policy in the past few months, and it shows that it's been working for American workers. When you look at President Biden, in the last quarter of 2024, median weekly earnings fell 2.1%. In the first quarter of your term, they went up 3.3%. And that's why we're doing the trade policy we're doing. It's to help the workers of the United States of America. And they're the best in the world, but they can't do it without a level playing field. And you have flipped the script. For many years, the other countries had high tariffs and high non-tariff barriers while we were open to, right, to all of their labor and services and goods and capital. You flipped it. Now we have the tariffs, and they have lowered theirs and the non-tariff barriers. And we couldn't have done it without you and the leverage you've created. So between the tariffs and the deals, the hot streak continues for the workers of America. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Really good job, by the way. He's a good negotiator. Very good negotiator. Thank you. Please.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
And good afternoon. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Thank you for joining us today. You were just watching President Trump's meeting with cabinet members, his 7th one actually, at the White House Live. And the overall message is that the U.S. is in incredible shape. He's looking forward to next year's World Cup, Super Bowl, and the Olympics as well. And of course, let's not forget America's 250th anniversary. So we heard updates from the cabinet members, including on topics such as factories and jobs coming back to the U.S. And we're going to discuss all this with today's panel. Joining us is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast, and Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. First of all, good afternoon. Good to see you both, as always. Mike, starting with you today. Just your initial thoughts here. What stood out to you in the meeting?
Yeah, well, first off, good to see you guys as always on this Tuesday. Let's start with the good. I like that these are open to the public. I like that there's everyone going around the table talking about different things. We can get into some of those particulars, but I do like this overall. I'm not saying the Biden administration didn't do this, but you've seen how frequent these have happened. It feels like this happens once every couple of months, where President Trump invites the media in and cameras in to capture this, and then they kind of go around the room. A few things kind of stood out to me, and I know we'll dive probably deeper into some of the economic stuff and whether or not, you know, Trump has the power to fire Lisa Cook, and we can get into that stuff. That obviously stood out to me. I'm very big in terms of my dad fled a country where, you know, and I'm not accusing Trump of being a dictator, so I don't want anybody to misuse my words, but where my dad fled a country where the person in charge of that country was jigging the numbers and getting rid of people because of the bad reporting of numbers and economic growth, and then hiring people that would craft that message so that way it would appear as if the country is doing better. So I never take that kind of stuff lightly when I'm thinking about those things. And we can drill into the economic stuff and whether or not Trump inherited a bad economy from Biden and stuff like that. But some of the things that stood out to me, I know the reclaiming of Labor Day, and I do think that is interesting. But I do like, Don, just at a high level, I do like that this is open to the public. And I encourage more of the American people, you should be watching more of these type of things if you want to listen to the folks that are in the president's cabinet talking about their respective departments.
Okay, Tony, a lot was covered today. Your initial thoughts. He talked about President Trump, energy and AI, and he pointed to the data center being built by Meta, which he showed the image almost the size of Manhattan, expected to be built in Louisiana. Your overall thoughts?
Well, good to be with you both, of course. I think that, again, like Mike, I'm rather happy to see these kind of meetings in front of the public. To be completely honest, I could do with a little bit less of the sycophancy, especially from Steve Witkoff. Mainly, again, don't get me wrong, I'm more than thrilled to see a lot of these ceasefires and peace negotiations. But again, one of the things that you have to weigh on the scale when they are all open to the public and you have a team of mavericks who is doing everything all at once, that few minutes that they have is an opportunity to impress the boss, as it has been for the end of time. Again, personally, it's not even a political thing. I just don't care for that. I'm more of a get to it kind of a guy. That stuff said, some of the stuff Trump is getting to, like the data centers, I would say is 90% good. Again, I will be one of these few conservatives who will say that perhaps we should make sure that some of these data centers are being responsible with their power use. Again, not just their power, but their water use. I'm, of course, for the expansion, the mass expansion of natural gas, of nuclear energy specifically. I think that looking at some of that stuff is an excellent thing. On the economic side, look, you tossed it over to Jameson before you cut over to us. And the trade rep has been negotiating a lot of tariffs as leverage. Again, when tariffs are used as leverage, excellent. When tariffs are used as long-term policy, it is a political play to get the union voters who used to be kind of blue-collar Bill Clinton voters of the 90s. Now they are part of the Republican coalition, which is a very weird place to be in, may I just say. And to that, I'd say the Labor Day comment is rather apropos, given the way that all unions except teacher are moving over to the, I wouldn't say the right side, but more of the populist faction of the right. And I think you can see that here. But as crazy as it sounds, this is the most business as usual cabinet meeting we've seen yet from this administration.
Okay, Mike, you heard what Tony said, and you said earlier that there were good parts and bad parts for you. You talked about the good parts, so what's the bad part?
Well, Tony said it. I'm so glad he said it, man, because now I can piggyback and hammer it. I don't need the kissing up. We don't need, it doesn't need to be called the Gulf of America. No, Americans don't care about whether or not it's called the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America. That is stupid things. I mean, I have no other phrasing for it, no other words to use for it. We don't care about that stuff. Americans do not care about that. What they care about is the unemployment rate, which has kind of stayed a little bit steady from when 2025 and Biden left around 4%. Now it's still around 4.2%. We need to see that drop. We need to see what sectors are going to grow. Like Tony just said, and I'm so glad he said it, Tony, you said it beautifully, about tariff policy being used as a negotiating ploy. Because when it's not used as a negotiating ploy, what you see is businesses start to say, I don't know if I can spend the cash here. I don't know if I'm going to have the operating budget for that. So what does that mean? That means hiring freezes. That means other industries are going to have a secondary and tertiary.
Walmart, for instance.
Yes, exactly. But I'll even go to the secondary part and third part, which is hospitality and travel, right? Because that extra spend that they had was going to be spent maybe doing company offsites or maybe doing something in the travel industry that would allocate rooms and all of these different things. And I've heard this from, again, traveling the state of Florida and hearing from different businesses and business owners about this, what tariffs is causing and the uncertainty. So there's a lot that came from this cabinet meeting. I think the bad is kind of what Tony said. With every single person going first, I like, the labor secretary and her name, Lori Chavez, for example. Lori, I don't need the spiel. I don't need to suck up right now. I just need you to get to what your department is currently doing right now with respect to reporting data, giving that back to the President of the United States. This is not the time to do that. 2024, September, October of 2024, during the campaign cycle, you can do all of that. Now that you're in this position and you're leading a major department within the government, you need to explain what your role and responsibilities are in the government, what it is that you're doing, and how you worked with the American people, or whether or not your job affects the American people and how. Outside of that, to Tony's overarching point, I don't need to suck up. And I'm so glad Tony said it, because I didn't want to say it. I wanted to wait for Tony to say it, and he said it, and I love piggybacking on it.
Well, that's why we have this panel. You guys, you basically piggyback off each other without, actually, communicating that to each other.
Right.
Well, I want to bring up crime. You guys haven't brought that up yet. Trump said his efforts to reduce crime is apparently doing very well ahead of the Olympics, World Cup 250th celebration. And one little thing, he highlighted the incident that our very own White House reporter, Iris Tao, experienced, being threatened at gunpoint. She was saying she was pistol whipped, and if she were shot, she was saying that her friends, her family would have never known.
It really bothers me. I followed the story regarding your reporter Iris closely. Again, I'm not from DC. I'm from Indiana. But going to DC as much as I have, of course, the way that crime had gripped that city, again, the way that these administrations, then I mean this at the city level, had continually promised to address crime, and then it just got worse, and they blamed it on exterior and extemporaneous issues. That's very frustrating. I think, if I might, I'm not going to speak for Mike, but I'll speak for me here. The reason that I didn't mention crime is that a lot of things the Trump administration is doing regarding illegal immigration and crime at kind of the macro level, and then also at the micro facilitation level, are not only very popular with the American people by the polling showing that it's no longer at the top priority or top concern. Again, today, Iris can walk the streets of DC in most places and feel a lot safer than she had. And by the way, that's not a political gotcha. it's a methodology of thanks. You know, I said the same thing when Josh Shapiro, the Democrat governor of Pennsylvania, ordered that a certain part of Pittsburgh get its stuff together so certain pieces of crime weren't happening. Wes Moore in Maryland has shown recently some shakiness on this, but before he's tried some decent strategies in Baltimore with some good degree. But what I see as far as the crime situation is concerned is, again, very effective, getting the nation's capital to a position where families can actually come enjoy the city, where people can go to work without the carjackings. Friends of mine who are no longer with us because of the violence in Washington, that it's a good thing to solve. And the same with illegal immigration. Those are good things, and they should be celebrated, whether or not there's sycophancy. I will briefly, I don't want to hog the microphone here. I'm not sure I agree with Mike on the Americans don't want certain things like name changes, given the radical move to change every name on a lot of other American institution things, not the Gulf of Mexico, but over the last decade. So I'd say some of that might be warranted, but maybe to be celebrated in a cabinet meeting by the 7th meeting, yeah, probably not.
Okay, Tony, so I want your thoughts on the efforts in reducing crime in D.C., over 1,000 arrests, and, you know, our Iris Howe saying she feels safer on the streets. Or Mike?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Well, so first off, I'm going to piggyback on something Tony said there. And I never want to plight anybody that's been through something that Iris has gone through. And Tony, your friends, you spoke about them in the past tense. So condolences there. And I never want to belittle anything like that. Here's what I will say about the crime part of this. And I'm going to piggyback on what Tony said in terms of long term when he was talking about tariffs. If we're going to mobilize the National Guard into, according to U.S. News and World Report, the 10 most violent, or at least in terms of statistical data, the 10 most violent cities in America, D.C. is not in that top 10, right? 4 of them reside in red states. We're going to mobilize the National Guard to these red states. 3 of them happen to be in Louisiana.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. But it's not
for
scalable,
Indiana, for
right?
example.
Yeah, right. But Tony, so it's not scalable, right? I think you and I both agree it's not scalable. It's not something that you can do long term. So I think Democrats have lost the crime, soft on crime message outside of statistical data on the messaging front, because they don't come out and say it how I'm about to say it right now. We want to stop crime. We want to give law enforcement the resources they need. They need better policing, but we also have to work with community organizations that are on the ground, mental health services organizations. I've had a panel discussion here on NTD with some folks that are in that same vein that are doing that kind of work in a couple different cities, including in Tennessee. Like, you need to work with folks on the ground while also giving police resources, because the deterrent factor is great to have troops at least make or give the appearance of making everything feel safe. But if Congress doesn't approve this past the extended 30 days and those troops end up going away, what we're left with is the same DC police force policing the same community. What has changed? That's where we need the funding to make sure that it's going to the right places and make sure it's giving the police better training, better weaponry, if we're recruiting more, but then also the community organizations that are working to stop crime, to get people off the streets. I say this as somebody that grew up in the not best area of the Bronx and then ended up moving to the whitest neighborhood of all time, 40 minutes north, because my dad wanted to put me in a good school. I know what it looked like from a community perspective living in the Bronx and what options I had versus what living in Harrison, New York. You can go look both of those up and look up the statistical data around both of those 2 towns to see the key differences and why somebody like me, I don't have as many friends that are left from the Bronx, whereas the community in Harrison and Westchester County rescued me because there were things to do after school and there wasn't as much crime. And there's a makeup there, demographic-wise, but then there's also what's available-wise. And I think if we're going to truly stop crime, and we use Brandon Scott, for example, the mayor of Baltimore, and what he's done from a community perspective with reinvesting some money into these community programs and knocking on doors and making sure that we make community folks feel safe, in addition to giving money to police to make sure they can police their communities. Those are ways that need to be replicated. So if the president truly wants to be about that, which I think he does, I think all Republicans, and I think there are some Democrats that do, they just get lost on the messaging part of it. Let's work in conjunction to make sure that the police are funded, not defunded, but then also these community programs are getting the funding that they need so we get the kids off the street so they're not committing crimes.
Okay, Tony, one quick response from you on what Mike said, and then I would like to have you comment on our second topic today, which is the deal with Intel, where the U.S. is owning 10% of the company in equities. Is this a more of a bailout move, a strategic investment? Is it about national security?
I mean, it's political posturing. If it is on national security, that would be a first to me. I didn't believe that Intel was selling some of its shares internationally. I think it's a bad move. So I'll answer that right up front. I disagree with it. I don't think it's a smart move. We didn't like it when Obama invested in Solyndra. I don't like it now when Trump is encouraging the Department of Defense to invest in Intel. So that moving aside to Mike's point here, this is where I do think that I do have a bit of disagreement. That it's a messaging kind of problem for a lot of Democrats, that we don't see that played out in policy and practice. Of the major cities that we talked about, even in red states, they are all run by blue-centric city councils and mayors who come to the table every election time and say, well, if we just throw more money at it, whether it's at the police, it's community programs, it's after-school programs, that's going to fix it. And in many cases, they do try these. Brandon Johnson in Chicago, they've thrown a lot of money at these community programs, and it does very, very little. The key data that we shows is that in real terms, fatherlessness is a major epidemic in rural America and inner city America. And the highest concentrations of fatherlessness correlates with high crime, no matter the community, no matter the race, no matter the religion. And so when we look at the Trump administration kind of more broadly, it's kind of a long-term solution here. I don't see sending the National Guard to every city. I don't see, I see that as a leverage point, like you said. But realistically for DC, I think that it deserves to lose the local control under the Home Act. I think that Congress should get off their lazy butts, govern the city appropriately, because Congress was never intended to be its own special citizen-run polity. I think that Maryland and Virginia should take, good chunks of that stuff back, and we should go to a more traditional understanding that's far more easily feasible for long-term governance that keeps people safer.
All right, Mike, we got to wrap up. Any final thoughts you have on anything we've discussed so far, and what do you think of the 10% stake in Intel?
Yeah, well, like I said, we'll have to catch up on that last point that Tony made on Tuesday of next week. But on the Intel front, couldn't agree more with Tony. As somebody who's worked in product and technology for 10 years, the government shouldn't be in the business of owning shares of some type of company like that manufactures technology or has a say in technology. If the government bought 25% of Apple tomorrow, we should all be losing our minds because Apple has UID devices that have tracking capabilities in them. You shouldn't be getting in the business of that and replicating that. And I'll echo what Rand Paul said. This is a type of socialism. I thought we were against socialism, right? So I'm totally against it. To Tony's larger point,
it's just bailout bait.
It's a bailout bait. I totally agree with Tony on that point for sure.
Okay, well, great discussion again. We'll continue this next week potentially, and I hope both of you would come. And that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Thanks Mike.
Coming up after the break, a federal judge today has thrown out the Trump administration's lawsuit against Maryland's entire federal branch. A block on immediate deportations will stand. Stay tuned.
£6 prescription glasses from Select Specs are always great value. There are no offer codes or first-time customers only. Anyone can buy them, anytime. And you can upgrade to Select Specs Express for next-day delivery. And with deferred payments, you can spread the cost.
See now, pay later with Select Specs £6 specs. Next-day delivery and deferred payment options available at selectspecs.com/£6.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double an impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank.
I have hope.
The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers.
Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free adult education centers near you.
A federal judge today threw out the Trump administration's lawsuit against Maryland's entire federal bench. The lawsuit challenged a standing order by the chief judge that stopped the immediate deportation of migrants challenging their removals. The Virginia federal judge Thomas Collin, who heard the case, said the Maryland judge correctly imposed temporary stays on deportations. The Trump administration argued that the standing order interfered with its authority to police immigration matters and enforce the nation's immigration laws. Collins said the proper course for the administration would have been to either appeal any one of the immigrant cases or file a rules challenge with the Judicial Council, which has the authority to rescind or modify local court rules. Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook is filing a lawsuit against her removal by President Trump. Trump says he fired Cook over alleged improprieties in mortgage loans. In a letter posted to social media, Trump accused Cook of deceitful and potentially criminal conduct tied to her mortgage applications. The allegations stemmed from claims that Cook declared 2 separate homes as her primary residence when applying for loans in Michigan and Georgia. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director William Pulte referred the matter to the Justice Department earlier this month. President Biden appointed Cook in 2022. In an email statement to Associated Press, Cook said she would not step down, saying Trump had no cause or authority to fire her. Cook's lawyer said that Trump's attempt to fire her lacks factual or legal basis. Trade is in focus across Asia this week. A senior negotiator from China heads to Washington. The U.S. and Japan are finalizing a $550 billion investment deal, plus new American tariffs are hitting Indian exports. NTD's Daniel Monahan brings us up to speed.
Senior Chinese trade negotiator Li Changgang is expected in Washington this week to meet U.S. officials. Li may hold deputy-level talks with U.S. counterparts. Reuters reports the visit is not part of formal negotiations. Businesses on both sides of the Pacific are watching closely to see whether the latest tariff extension will become permanent. The two countries agreed on August 11th to extend their tariff truce for another 90 days, keeping U.S. duties of 30% on Chinese imports and Chinese duties of 10% on American goods.
In another trade development, President Trump Monday threatened to restrict U.S. chip exports and impose additional tariffs on imports from countries that refuse to eliminate digital taxes.
In a Truth Social post, Trump said digital market regulations imposed by other countries were intended to harm or discriminate against American technology. Trump said the countries, quote, also outrageously give a complete pass to China's largest tech companies. This must end, and end now. The president urged countries that have such taxes to show respect to America and what he called its amazing tech companies or face the consequences. Trump wrote that America and American technology companies are neither the piggy bank nor the doormat of the world any longer. Many countries, especially in Europe, have levied taxes on the sales revenue of digital service providers, including Alphabet's Google, Meta's Facebook, Apple, and Amazon. Turning to Japan, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says the United States will make an announcement this week on Japan's $550 billion investment in the U.S. A top Japanese trade envoy is planning to visit Washington this week to formalize the package. Lutnick discussed the deal on Fox News.
We need to make semiconductors in America. We need to make antibiotics in America. We need the rare earths in America, and that's exactly what the Trump administration is all about. So the Japanese agreement, which we're going to announce later this week, that's $550 billion at the hand of Donald Trump, and he can go invest it to hit all these points.
Lutnick says the $50 billion allocated under the 2022 CHIPS Act to cover some of those areas is just too small.
We need hundreds of billions of dollars of semiconductor investment in America, and the Trump administration and Donald Trump is going to bring that home. You watch us do it. We're going to bring it home.
Washington and Tokyo agreed in July to set a reduced 15% tariff on imports from Japan in exchange for a $550 billion package of U.S. investment. And in India, exporters are bracing for disruptions after Washington confirmed it would impose an additional 25% tariff on all Indian origin goods from Wednesday.
Indian exports will face U.S. duties of up to 50% after President Trump announced extra tariffs as punishment for New Delhi's purchases of Russian oil. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And a trade update. Indonesia says the United States has agreed in principle to exempt its exports of cocoa, palm oil, and rubber from the 19% tariff imposed since August 7th.
We have submitted the documentation to the U.S., so now we are waiting for what is their response. But during the meeting, basically, the principle has been agreed. That is for product that is not produced in the U.S., such as palm oil, cacao, rubber. For that, will be zero or close to zero.
Indonesia says the exemption will take effect once both sides reach a final pact. Another trade discussion concerning Indonesia is potential U.S. investment in fuel storage in the country. The region's largest economy was among the first nations to strike a tariff deal with Trump in July. But Jakarta ended up facing the same rate as some other countries, such as Thailand and Malaysia, and just below Vietnam's figure of 20%. Critical minerals are in the spotlight today. The U.S. government is moving to add 6 mineral commodities to the list of its critical minerals. It's part of efforts to boost domestic production and reduce reliance on foreign suppliers. The U.S. Geological Survey is recommending commodities including silicon, copper, silver, and lead be added. The updated list will be published in the Federal Register today. At the same time, arsenic and tellurium, previously considered critical, are recommended for removal. If approved, the 2025 critical minerals list will grow to 54 commodities, up from 50 in 2022 and just 35 in 2018. China dominates the processing of at least 30 of the minerals already deemed critical. Since last year, Beijing has tightened exports of several key minerals. President Trump met with the South Korean president yesterday at the White House, and this is the first time President Lee of South Korea has made his way to Washington since he took office. Joining us now to give analysis on this is Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. He's also the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney. Good afternoon, Steve. Thank you for coming on. Did yesterday's meeting, in your opinion, deepen the U.S.-South Korea alliance?
I think it did. There obviously, when you have a comprehensive meeting, there are going to be some things that are covered in depth and some things that are not covered very much, at least not in the public eye. And when President Trump is hosting the meeting and receiving the foreign press and the domestic press and speaks at length, there are a lot of things that are not alliance related that might also get addressed. But I thought it was extremely important to have the meeting. President Trump has been very clear since before his reelection that he sought to reach out and meet again with the leader of North Korea. That's a topic very relevant to South Korea. And publicly, they both reaffirmed the importance of collaborating with Japan. that I think is net progress on a number of fronts.
So on that point, how would you describe the current South Korean president's approach to, for example, the U.S. alliance to China, and you mentioned North Korea?
Well, I think the China part is the least clear, and I think that was the part that was probably discussed in private as opposed to in front of the cameras. The parts of the alliance that were talking about the contributions that each make, the status of forces, things that always get renegotiated over specific terms. I think the normal part of the alliance relationship is strong, but really the most important thing is the personal rapport between leaders. That matters a lot in dealing with President Trump. I think it matters a lot in terms of the U.S.-South Korean alliance. That was the biggest down payment I saw made. There was strong rapport, and that's unusual given that the party in power in South Korea is not of the center right. And so in times past, there's been tension between U.S. Republican presidents and more of the left side of politics in South Korea.
And Steve, I would like to know, by your analysis on the U.S.-South Korea alliance, if a conflict arises, all-out conflict between Taiwan and China, how likely would you say will South Korea align with the U.S., and to what degree?
Well, I think that there's a very high degree of certainty that there would be communication, collaboration. I don't know that we ask the South Korean forces to intervene. The roles and missions of allies and partners in a time of crisis aren't going to be delineated publicly in advance. There could be a lot of different supporting roles. It could be that South Korea takes lead in making sure that North Korea doesn't do things that distract and destabilize and otherwise undermine support for Taiwan in a time of crisis. So I think that the conversation is being held in a very candid and direct way by the two men that are in charge of the two countries. That is important. And I think that we can't count on anything in a time of crisis, but we can have a high confidence that this is in a more manageable space than it's been for a while.
So one thing Trump talked about yesterday, I don't know if it's related to this, but he said he wants ownership of land used by a military base in South Korea. Why is this important?
Well, I strongly suspect this might have been one of the more surprising things from the South Korean side to hear during the conversation. And I also strongly suspect this is developer and builder Donald Trump, prior to being President Trump, talking that when it comes down to the value proposition, owning is better than leasing in a lot of respects. And if we spent a lot on leases and terms for those leases over the years, having ownership and some sense of permanency to the pricing structure is probably what the businessman is thinking. But that was the first time I've heard that kind of a prospect come up in the U.S. ROK conversation in recent years. So let's see how it goes down and what comes of it.
All right, and another point I'd like to mention here is, what does it mean for President Lee to send a delegation to Beijing to discuss economic cooperation ahead of his meeting with the U.S. president, President Trump?
Well, there have been a lot of governments in Asia, but not just Asia, who have been trying to maintain some sense of economic opportunity and managing risk with China while still aligning with the United States on some national security concerns. Some of our European allies behave in this way. Some of our Middle Eastern allies behave in this way. Several of our Asia Pacific allies behave in this way. It was particularly sensitive with this new government in South Korea because there's questions about that party and that segment of Korea leaning a bit more towards China and accommodating North Korea, in some cases being anti-America or challenging America. And so I think President Lee was looking to assuage those concerns on a personal rapport basis. I think he did a good job with President Trump, but that's obviously is a deep strategic issue that needs constant gardening and maintenance. And so that part, one visit will not solve, but I think there was a good investment.
Okay, one more thing, Steve. Trump says he wants to meet Kim Jong-un again this year. What do you think could be the priorities of that meeting? How are you looking at President Lee's approach to Pyongyang?
Yeah, I don't personally know very much about what President Lee's approach would be. It sounds, from what I observed, that President Trump is somewhat in the driver's seat, that the leader of North Korea would possibly seek to meet with the President of the United States over other leaders. President Trump, I think correctly, would like to make sure that our most critical Asian allies are not left out of that. And of course, our ally on the peninsula should not be left out of that. So he opened up the conversation to maybe doing it together. And that, I think, was also a surprise to the South Korean side. But the president of South Korea sounded as though he would like to take him up on the idea. So this is uncharted territory in talking this way. We don't have any sense of when this might happen or how it might happen, but in principle, both sides have agreed that they would be open to it.
Well, Steve, it's always great to talk to you. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And now President Trump is answering reporter questions from his cabinet meeting. Let's take a look.
Because of him and his high interest rates, the housing is less than it could be. We're going to get that straightened out very quickly. He gets out very quickly, fortunately. He's been the wrong guy. Not a bad person, I don't think, but you know, I do think he has motives, by the way, but I don't consider him. I've dealt with worse, but he hasn't done the job. The recommendation from a certain person was not a great recommendation. That person vouched for him, but we're doing a very careful study. We'll see what happens. Look, we just put a very good man in one position. We might switch him to the other. It's a longer term and pick somebody else, but we're very happy with the person we have in there. And we'll have a majority very shortly, so that'll be great. Once we have a majority, housing is going to swing and it's going to be great. People are paying too high an interest rate. That's the only problem with housing. We have to get the rates down a little bit. And when we do, it's going to be a tremendous difference. The country is doing so well. It sort of blows through the fact that we have a man who's too late and not doing a very good job. Please, in blue.
Mr. President, regarding crime in D.C., something that might help especially ladies is being able to carry. I know you've talked about reciprocal carry. Would you like for that to apply here in Washington, D.C.?
When you say carry, I assume you're talking about carry what we're talking
Conceal
about, right?
or, yeah.
In other words, carry a gun. Is that right? Would you like to carry a gun?
I would like to, yes, sir.
You'd feel a hell of a lot better, right?
I absolutely would.
I agree with you 100%, okay?
Okay, great.
But I'll tell you, within another couple of weeks, it's hard to believe what's been accomplished in 12 days, but within another couple of weeks, you won't have to carry. You're not going to have to carry. You're going to be safe. People are safe now. The turn has gone fast. I knew it was going to go fast, but this turn has gone really fast. And within a month or two, this is going to be one of the safest places in the country. I have no doubt about it. And we'll do an extension. We'll work with Congress, or I could declare an emergency, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. We'll work with Congress. We're going to be working with Congress. I spoke with our great speaker, and I will be speaking to John Thune. And we're getting tremendous support from Congress, especially maybe here. Everybody wants to see our Capitol be great. Could say be great again. You know, it's such a beautiful place, but if you have crime, nothing looks beautiful. So, but you won't need to carry a gun, but if you do,
well, I would like to have the option, just in case.
Well, a lot of people feel that.
Also in other blue cities, you've got Karen Bass in Los Angeles, Brandon Johnson in Chicago. It seems to be very popular here, the fact that people can walk around, go to restaurants, shop, and not have to worry about their safety. If blue city mayors oppose those efforts in their cities, do you anticipate that Democrat voters are going to take it out on them at the ballot?
I think so. I think that crime is going to be a big thing. And we are the party, the Republicans are the party that wants to stop crime. We're against crime. The Democrats like crime. I don't know why. I mean, we talk about common sense. I think I got elected on talking about common sense. The border, we have to have a wall. We don't want transgender for everybody. We don't, as I said before, we don't want to have men playing in women's sports. I mean, you see the difference. Weightlifting. Take a look at weightlifting. Take a look at long distance running, where a runner came in 5 hours and 14 minutes ahead of another runner, both champions. One male, one female. It's not fair. It's demeaning to women. It's so bad. But they have another one, and I think this is the beauty of them all. Crime. they're against crime prevention. You can't do that. You can't do that. And I think to myself, I say, is there some game? You know, they're smart people. Is there anybody that could cheat like that in elections is smart, okay? And there's never been in history anybody that could cheat like that. They're smart. They're brilliant in many ways. I say, is there some trick to this? When they say, Trump is in Washington, D.C., stopping crime. He's a dictator. And people are being mugged like your brilliant associate here. I don't know how you're alive. I mean, based on that story, you got very lucky. He didn't just go, all he had to do is this, right? And, you know, it's pretty amazing. So we have something. I think we have two things. I think what Bobby was talking about with respect to drug prices is unbeatable. Nobody else could have done it but us. And I think that crime will be the big subject of the midterms and will be the big subject of the next election. Think of it. They are, instead of saying, Trump's right about crime, it's really bad in Chicago. You have a guy in Illinois, the governor of Illinois, saying that crime has been much better in Chicago recently, and Trump is a dictator. And most people say, if you call him a dictator, if he stops crime, he can be whatever he wants. I'm not a dictator, by the way, but he can be whatever he wants. I think it's going to be a big subject for the midterms, and I think the Republicans are going to do really well. They called it a trap. This Democrat consultant, they said, he's put him in a trap again, because these are all traps. You know, 80-20, but they're not 80-20. They're almost 100-0, all these issues. But I would say that crime is stronger than men playing in women's sports. I think it's stronger than transgender for everybody. You know, it's transgender for everybody, according to them. It's stronger. Of course, this is the cause of it, open borders. Open borders gave us a lot of this crime. So, you know, so they're sort of on an equal footing, I guess. But crime is going to be a very big subject. And you know what he should do if he was smart? Illinois or New York, if they want, or Gavin Newsom, they should call me and they should say, you know, we've got a problem. You know, we could solve with this team, different players, but work the same way, because you'd leave them here. You don't want to take them out and let it go to hell. Everybody's so happy in Washington. I bet you walked over here today and you had no fear. Nobody has any fear anymore for the last 12 days. But it would be so smart. Gavin Newsom called me up, say, you know what, we have a big problem. We have the Olympics coming up. We want to do well. We have tremendous problems on crime and other things, and would love some help. Chicago in particular, maybe right now. I mean, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. We could solve their problem in, it's bigger than this, let's say 2 months. Okay, working with their police. I know their police very well. I have a big project in Chicago. I was so proud of it. It's the best site in Chicago. I got it. Nobody else got it. I was happy as hell. That was when I was a real estate guy, and I got it. The Sun Times site, they call it. And I built a building. It's a great building. And I'm so embarrassed when I see the kind of crime stats coming out. They're so embarrassed. And if I were a governor, a Democrat governor, or mayor, or anybody having to do, I'd call up President Trump. I'd say, President Trump, we need your help. We saw what you've done in D.C. in a period of 12 days. This is 12 days. We haven't even started. This is going to be so safe. It's going to be the safest place on earth. And we'll do the same thing in Chicago. But I'd like to be asked, as opposed to just going in and doing it. Because, you know, when you go in and do it, then they start screaming, oh, he shouldn't be here. We don't need him. We're doing so well. And then the better we do, they take credit for it. So it's really pretty unfair.
Mr. President,
yes, go ahead.
crime, for a lot of victims like myself, a big concern is long-term sustainability. Can you share with the American public about your plan in ensuring that D.C. is safe in the long term?
Longer term, yeah. Well, it's a great question. Number one, we want to stay there for longer than 30 days, as you know. We have an absolute mandate, and I can extend it, but I'd rather not have to declare a national emergency, because by that time, I mean, right now there's not an emergency. We've done, as you sort of said yourself, it feels like a different world. got under arrest and prosecution, and we've taken some, and we're in the process of taking hundreds out of our country that shouldn't be here. And these are hardcore professional criminals. They were born to be criminals, in my opinion, but they're seriously bad people. Murderers, drug dealers, you know them all. You see them all as you walk beautifully to work, and every once in a while somebody puts a gun to your head, because that's what happened in your case. We're getting a lot of them out of the country. We're putting a lot of them in prison because we're afraid to bring them out of the country. They could come back. You know, as good as we're doing, they could come back. We don't want them back. And that's going to solve a lot of it. We also think there should be a presence here for long enough. We should also work with our police department, because you have very good police here. Very good. We're working very well with them, by the way. And we have to work together for a while. We have some people that are very tough and very strong working with the police. They're going to be able to handle it. And you know what? If it gets a little bit bad, just a little bit, I'll bring them back in and we'll straighten it out and we'll make it perfect. You're going to be so safe in the city. And you're going to have the city beautified. We're going to be giving out, we're working with Clark, as you know, construction. They're the biggest. They're working with me also. We're building a beautiful ballroom for the White House. They've been after it for 150 years, employs a lot of people. It's going to be as beautiful a ballroom as has ever been built. And Clark is the big builder in this city. They've done, I guess, a majority of the good work, the big work. And we're working with them on the beautification, the fixing up of the roads, the fixing up of the medians, between the roads, so cars don't wrap into each other. They wrap into, I have one piece sitting on the ground for weeks. This was a year ago when I had to come in, unfortunately, for fake court cases. And I looked at the condition. We have it fixed up a lot right now. You know, the tents are removed and a lot of things have taken place. But I'd come into this city and I'd say, boy, does it look bad. The filth on the roads, the medians were broken and always laying down and nobody would fix them. And all of that, well, we're going to have new medians. We're going to have a nice topping put on the road. We're not going to rip the roads apart and start a construction project that lasts for 2.5 years as they rebuild the road, which they don't have to do. And we're going to have this place so beautiful. That's going to be a part of it. Now, the biggest part is crime, but it's also a part, you know, when you see a dirty city, it's like I told, I don't know, it became the #1 thing viral. I said my father is a smart guy, he's a great guy, he's a loving, wonderful father, but he could be a little on the tough side. He told me that, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty, filthy door going into the restaurant, don't go there because the kitchen's dirty also. When they see a dirty Capitol, the rest of the world, they lose a lot of respect for our country. This Capitol is going to be so beautiful. We're going to have new poles, new lights, new fences. It's stuff that, when you add it up, it's money, but it's peanuts compared to what we're talking about. And we're also going to have great safety.
Mr. President, I wanted to ask you on crime and also a question on foreign policy that maybe other officials can weigh into. And on crime, Iris shared her story, and you mentioned, people going.
That was a terrible story, because I'm just amazed she's here. When the gun is, Pam, when the gun is put to the head, did they ever capture these people, by the way?
I kept calling, but I haven't heard back about this guy.
It'd be really great if you could maybe give the information. She's very good at capturing people, you know? She's very good. If you could give that information to Pam, would be great. Would you do that? All right. Wouldn't you'd love to see them? I would assume you'd like to see them captured.
For sure.
You can't. You just can't.
For years.
Yeah, take a good look at that.
But,
go ahead. So go ahead.
Just a few weeks ago, I was out to dinner with my husband, and we're taking the metro back, and then we get attacked on the metro. They're throwing things. Some teenagers, they're throwing liquid at us.
Oh, they're throwing things. They throw. How about where they chop down the granite curbs and the concrete curbs? But the granite curbs so expensive. Those granite curbs, nobody uses them because they're so expensive. And you see a guy chopping them and handing out big chunks of them like a brick because they couldn't get in because people were stopping them from walking out. A little bit unusual when you're walking with a bag of bricks. Generally speaking, Sean, that's not a good sign. Right? It's not a good sign. But they now come in with hammers. They can disguise a hammer, and they start pounding the concrete and the granite, and they hand out chunks. And those people take those chunks and start throwing them at cops, or they stand on the top of bridges and they drop them down into the windshield of your car, and you get killed running into a light pole. It's those days are over.
I wanted to ask you, Governor Hochul, Kathy Hochul, said that she spoke to you on the phone, and you said you might send National Guard troops to New York. You mentioned that. So will you?
I'd love to do it if she'd like. I get along with Kathy. If she'd like to do that, I would do it. You see, look, New York has difficulty like other, and I don't want to make this I want to make this likely, but the places we're talking about happen to be virtually all Democrat-run. Now, take a look at your 25 places that are most troubled. Everyone, except maybe one, and it's way back in number 24 or 25, but essentially 25 out of 25 are run by Democrats, and cashless bail was a disaster. When they did that, and I believe it was instituted first in New York, but when they did cashless bail, that was a tragedy for this, because that's when it really started getting bad. When somebody kills somebody, you don't say you can come out, you don't have to put up anything. You put that person in jail and you find out whether or not it's true, but you don't give cashless bail with a promise to come back in a couple of months. We'll start talking to you. Because they go out and they kill other people, and you can't do that. The cashless bail has been, it's just a woke thing. It's got to stop. You see that, Christy, better than anybody. It's got to stop. It causes unbelievable, and we're doing that. We're stopping it in D.C. I would love to have the governor of Illinois call me and say, look, we have a problem in Chicago. We will stop that problem in Chicago in 2 months, maybe less, 2 months. We'll stop it. These are tough cookies we have working for us. These are tough cookies. These are not politically correct soldiers that I won't go into definitions of what that means, but these are not politically correct soldiers. These are rough guys. I watched it last night. I see it. I saw them the other day when we went down and we spent some time together with them. These are tough cookies. These are not people that you're going to laugh at and spit in their face and they're not going to do anything about it. And these people, they're afraid. These gang members who are bad people too. These are bad. These are just bad people. Ours are bad, but they're bad in a good sense, right? You don't understand that, Scott? And we can solve Chicago in 2 months. Now, then, as per your statement before, we have to keep it going, and we'll be able to keep it going. The first thing you have to do is get it down. We are very close to being at that position in D.C., and within a month, we will be, within a month from when we started, which is quicker than I thought, you're going to feel very, very safe. I think you feel very safe right now. But I would love it to have these governors, mayors call me and say, we'd like to invite you into our community because we have a problem and you can handle the problem and we can't. One other thing, sanctuary cities, they should be terminated. They're sanctuary for criminals. They're safety and security for criminals. They are very, very bad. And all of these places have big sanctuary cities, and all they're doing is protecting criminals. Okay.
You have spoken out very strongly for a long time about what you see as the weaponization of government.
Yeah.
Is your administration weaponizing
No.
government by digging into the mortgage records of officials you don't like?
No, they're public. I mean, you can find out those records. You can go check out the records yourself. And you should be doing that job, actually. You wouldn't do that because that's not the kind of reporter you are. But you should be doing that job. I shouldn't have to be doing it. If you did your job properly, we wouldn't have problems like Lisa Cook. Go ahead. You were going to say something? Go. Blue?
On national
Please.
security.
I think we have to have lower interest rates, yes.
A follow-up question for you and Madam Attorney General on national security. We've heard from Stephen Miller yesterday in the Oval Office that there are street criminals here in D.C. who are actually found to be doing business with transnational criminal cartels.
That's right.
overseas.
And we know who they are, and we know who they're doing business with. And we're arresting the people, very strongly arresting, and we're keeping them there because, you know, your laws here make it very difficult. And one of the other laws we're trying to get done, because you have 14-year-old kids that are just as tough as a 25-year-old kid, just as dangerous, and they carry the same gun. And we have to make a provision where they're treated like older people, because these are seriously tough, bad. They're children, but they're criminals, and they're really bad criminals. And they're used by older people because they never get charged because you can't do anything to them. But we are getting that change, Pam, I hope, because you have 14-year-old kids that are evil, they're sick, and they have to be put away. Something has to be done, because you can't have a society where they're allowed to walk the street. You know that better than anybody.
Mr. President, on your way to Alaska.
I can't believe it. You're not tired holding that?
I have a few more questions.
How strong are you? How strong are you? Look at him. He's been holding that thing for 3 hours. You're a good fisherman.
Well, I should give that a shot.
Go ahead.
On the way to Alaska, you had mentioned that there would be severe consequences if Vladimir Putin did not agree to a ceasefire.
Yeah.
After that summit that was rolled back, given the negotiations, is he back on the clock now?
I want to see that deal end. It's very, very serious what I have in mind if I have to do it, but I want to see it end. I think that in many ways he's there. Sometimes he'll be there and Zelensky won't be there. You know, it's like, who do we have today? I got to get them both at the same time. But I want to have it end. We have economic sanctions. I'm talking about economic, because we're not going to get into a shutdown. I said, that's not good. That's a lot of jets, you know. $150 million planes were shot down. A lot of them, 7, maybe more than that. They didn't even report the real number. I'm talking to a very terrific man, Modi of India. And I say, what's going on with you in Pakistan? Then I'm talking to Pakistan on trade. I said, what's going on with you in India? And the hatred was tremendous. Now, this has been going on for a hell of a long time, like sometimes with different names for hundreds of years. But I said, what's going on? I said, I don't want to make a trade deal. No, we want to make a trade deal. I said, no, I don't want to make a trade deal with you. You're going to have a nuclear war. You guys are going to end up in a nuclear war. And that was very important to them. I said, call me back tomorrow, but we're not going to do any deals with you, or we're going to put tariffs on you that are so high. You were there, Howard, right? Yeah. You're going to put tariffs on you that was so high, I don't give a damn, your head's going to spin. You're not going to end up in a war. Within about 5 hours, it was done. It was done. Now, maybe it starts again. I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll stop it if it does. We can't let these things happen. The Russia-Ukraine situation, last week, 7,012 soldiers, 7,012 soldiers died. They were Russian, they were Ukrainian, they weren't American, so a lot of people would say, what do you care? They're not American. I care. They're 12,000, over the last couple of weeks, over 12,000 people died in like in 2 weeks. You know, we're talking about crime where somebody's killed here or somebody. Think of it, you have your son leaving Russia, leaving Ukraine, their little house, wherever they live with their parents, they're waving goodbye, just like our parents would wave goodbye. And they're waving goodbye, son. And then a week later, his head's blown off in a stupid war by a drone, a whole new form of military problem. So, no, I'd like it to stop. I want to get it to stop. And it will not be a world war, but it'll be an economic war. And an economic war is going to be bad. And it's going to be bad for Russia, and I don't want that. Now, I have to also see, because not everybody, you know, Zelensky's not exactly innocent either, okay? You know, it takes two people to tango. And I say it all the time. You got to get them together. I get along with Zelensky now, but we have a much different relationship because now we're not paying any money to Ukraine. You know, stop that. We're paying money to ourselves. What's happening is NATO is buying all of the equipment and paying in full. But even with that, forget about that. I want to get it stopped because it's a lot of lives that are being lost. Every week it's 7,000, 5,000, 6,000. I get the reports and I see battlefields. I'd rather not see them. And you know, you read about Gettysburg. You read about Gettysburg and you see, you know, those 600,000 people, but in that war in particular was really bad, like 150,000 or something, just dead body. I'm seeing the same. I see pictures. I see satellite pictures of heads over here, arms over here, legs over here. And this is like a modern age. It's no different than the worst wars that I've ever seen. And if I can stop it because I have a certain power or a certain relationship, I had a very good relationship with President Putin. Very, very good. That's a positive thing again. And I think I'm probably the only, Steve Witkoff would tell you I'm the only one that can solve it. I don't know. He's told me that a few times, unless he was saying that just to build up my ego, but it's not really. I have no ego when it comes to this stuff. I just want to see it stop. Thousands of young people, mostly young people, are dying every single week. If I can save that by doing sanctions or by just being me, or by using a very strong tariff system that's very costly to Russia or Ukraine or whoever we have, you know. But I stopped 7 wars, and 3 of those wars were going on for more than 30 years. You know, if you look at Congo, if you look at, just look at any of them, almost all of them were going on for an extended period of time. Now, interestingly, one had just started. It was 2 days old, and you know that one. And we did that one when we were in Scotland negotiating. It was 2 days up, but there were 2,000 dead bodies laying on the border, and I got that one stopped too. And I'm very honored by that, but I still, the one that I thought would be the easiest is turning out to be the hardest. That's President Putin and President Zelensky, but I think I'll get it done.
Why do you think it's harder than
You never know. It's war.
Can you stop the family?
With war, you never know, right? War's very tricky, very horrible, but with war, you never know. Things change. People go into war, think they're going to win the war, and then they get their asses kicked, and they lose their country, and they lose millions of lives. Nobody goes into a war thinking they're going to lose. They go in. I'm sure that Ukraine thought they were going to win. It's going to be, you know, we're going to win. You're going to beat somebody that's 15 times your size. Biden shouldn't have let that happen. Biden shouldn't have. I mean, the man was grossly incompetent. He should have never been there. That would have never happened. But you don't go into a war that's 15 times your size.
The Fed just put out a statement saying that Lisa Cook has indicated through a personal attorney that she'll promptly challenge this action in court, seek a judicial decision that would confirm her ability to continue.
That's all right, whatever
it
it
says
is.
the Fed will abide by any court decision.
Thank you very much for reading
You abide
that.
by a court decision.
I abide by the court, yeah. I abide by the court. Yes, please. That's enough. That's enough.
Mr.
Go ahead.
President, what other companies are you thinking about taking stake in?
Well, you know, we didn't take a stake in the sense that it was reported. Everyone said, I bought a stake in Intel. No, I got it for free. I said I was with the, is that a correct statement? Howard was there.
Absolutely correct.
Scott knew all about it. They came in, a man was charged with something by a very good person. Senator Cotton made some statements about the gentleman that was running Intel. When he came in, and I said some rough things about him, I said, I'm not happy with it, and they called, and he was very devastated at what I said. I said he should immediately resign. And he came to see me, and I was very impressed by him, actually. And he made a mistake, or factors happened where something like this could have taken place. In the meantime, his board was staying by him. And I said to him, and took about, I would say, less than 45 seconds. I said, you know what you should do if you're smart? Give the United States of America 10% of your company. And he looked at me and he said, I'll do that. I said, I just made $11 billion for the United States. And we made the deal. I didn't pay, we didn't write a check. Now, I guess Biden, with his stupid CHIPS Act, handed money to all these people that didn't need any money. Exactly. It didn't do anything. You know, they're giving billions of dollars to everybody. They all have so much money, and they have more money. But there's no commitment that you had to build. They just took all this money. I don't know, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. See, with tariffs, they have to come in, because if they don't come in, they can't sell into our country. So it's power, and you don't have to give up any money. But I said to him very simply, I mean, I'm glad we're straightening this out, because everyone thinks I bought in. No. I said, it would be great, we'd be a great partner for you, and I want to see Intel do well. You know, Intel was a great company, and it can be a great company again. But I said, I think it would be good if we own 10% of your company. He said, I'll make that deal. And it happens to be worth $11 billion. So we made $11 billion for the country, and then I was criticized by some of the fake news media. That's not the American way. Actually, it is the American way. Now, if I can help other countries or do those deals with others, I would do that. I think it's great. It's good. Builds up our balance sheet. Let me tell you, our country is becoming very rich again. You don't see it. When the CBO came out on Friday and said, we just found $4 trillion, and that goes to reduce our deficit, $4 trillion, and it was from the tariffs. Our country is becoming very, very rich again. I hope you get used to it. You know, you're gonna have to get used to it.
In addition to reducing the deficit, any update on your previous talking about potentially giving Americans a tariff rebate check?
Well, we have a lot of money coming in, rebate check for the Americans, and it's coming in at tremendous numbers. Don't forget, I would say, Scott, we probably are talking about right now 50%, maybe even less than that. With all the money you're hearing is coming in, you're talking about, you know, a lot of it hasn't kicked in yet. And when it really kicks in is in 2 years when these plants are built and opened and the money starts pouring in, right? But, I mean, there's a concept of making you could call it a dividend, as we would say, making a dividend to the people in this country who have had to suffer through stupid leadership. And they paid a lot of taxes, and they got nothing for it. Or they got attacked like you were, okay, for it. No, there's a possibility. Primarily, we want to pay down debt, but there's a possibility that we take a piece of it and make a dividend to the people.
Mr. President, I have a question for Steve Witkoff, if I may.
Yeah.
This past weekend, Sergei Lavrov was saying that Putin will not sign a peace deal with Zelensky because Russia views him as illegitimate. Just wondering if the Russians have been relaying this to your team, if they view Zelensky, you know, as a leader worth signing a peace deal with, if they will.
Doesn't matter what they say. Steve can answer, but I can answer too. Doesn't matter what they say. Everybody's posturing. It's all bullshit, okay? Everybody's posturing. Steve, do you have a different answer?
I agree with you, sir.
In Kansas City, there's 500 people short of the police department, metro police. In New York City, it's 3,000. In Chicago, it's 1,300. Would they have had to bring in troops from the National Guard if the police departments in this country were fully staffed? Defund the police. How bad did that turn out for America?
It's an interesting question. I was surprised when I heard how many police were here. It's not a really big area. And I think they said they're down to 3,200 police or something like that. I said, that's a lot of police. And I was a little bit surprised because to me, that's a big force. And it's not a big area, but it is what it is. There's a lot of crime. You have a lot of, don't forget, you have a lot of police that weren't allowed to do their job. When I came in, as you remember, we made tremendous strides in a little conflict that we had going at the time because I allowed our military to make the decision. I said, you can make any decision you want. I gave it to the colonels in the field. I gave it to the captains in the field. You remember that where everything went through Biden, meaning one of the people, and everything went through Obama before him. Everything went through. They had to make the decision as to whether or not to attack the Taliban. So they'd find 30 people together, they'd call up Washington, and they'd go to a political hack who knew nothing about it. My first night, I got that same call. Like they called me, and they said, we have I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning because I listened to their system, and they were calling me, and they were asking me whether or not they could attack a group of people having to do with you-know-what war I'm talking about. And I said, I know nothing about this. Wait a minute. And then I said, who is he? Let me speak to the people calling. They're calling from Afghanistan. And I said, let me speak to the people. I want to speak to them. And it was a colonel. I said, where'd you go to school, Colonel? I went to West Point, sir. Were you a good student? I was, sir. I was a very good student. So you're calling the White House to ask for permission to attack. And by the time you get the answer, how long does it take? Sometimes 2 or 3 weeks. So by the time you get the answer, the people that you want to attack have already left, right? He said, how did you know that, sir? I said, let me ask you, so you're a good student, you went to West Point, and you love the military, right? Yeah. You make the decision. And I gave all those guys that went to all these great schools, and they're all military people, I gave them the right to make their own decision, and we kicked ISIS's ass. Don't forget, ISIS was supposed to take 5 years to terminate them, and we had a man named Raisin Kane, who happens to have done the whole thing in Iran. He's a great general, and he's a wonderful guy too, believe it or not, but he's a great soldier. We let them do their work, and we defeated ISIS. We defeated everybody. Every fight that we had militarily that I had, I won. And I let these great soldiers do some make a mistake, I guess. But like this colonel, I'll never forget it. Where did you go to school? I went to West Point, sir. I did ask him a question. I like good students as opposed to bad students. He said, I was a good student, sir. And I said, you do what's necessary. And, you know, I don't want to sound overly vicious, but he wiped out the entire group of very bad people that want to kill us. So you have to let them do their job. In Washington, they're not allowed to do their job, okay? They're not allowed. You have great police. You have great police, but they're not allowed. Hello. Go ahead.
On Congress, Mr. President, would you be open to a year-long continuing resolution?
I'm always open to whatever is necessary. Look, here's the problem in Congress. You have Democrats that will never vote for anything. I could say that we're going to lower your taxes by 50%. We're going to guarantee you free cities, safe cities. Nobody will ever get touched, molested, beat up, shot in the head. We're going to give you the greatest country ever. We need your vote. And they won't vote. And they do it in unison. The only thing they do good is cheat on elections and unite. You know why they unite? Not because they're good or they're loyal people. They unite because they're afraid. They're afraid of the radical left. And you can't get their vote. So we have a vote coming up at the end of September. And I think we're going to pass it because we have the majority. And I think almost every Republican will vote for an extension. Because no matter what deal you make with these people, look at Schumer. He made a deal a year and a half ago. And after making the deal, he's been almost run out of the party. He's not the same man. He's not the same man. He's finished. He aged 20 years. He's become a Palestinian, by the way. We call him our great Palestinian senator. But Chuck Schumer, and I wrote him a letter. I said, Chuck, that was really great. Thank you very much. And somebody gave the letter to the press, not me. And he was destroyed because they thought I was being sarcastic, and I wasn't. He made a great decision. It kept our country open. It was a positive. But you can count on almost no vote. I mean, I see things. I'll give you an example, crime. So we're going to pass a bill to stop crime. We may not get one Democrat vote, okay? We may not get one. So when you say continuing resolution, I guess so. And it's going to be passed exclusively by Republicans.
On farm
Mr. President,
visas,
why do you use
you mentioned in Iowa that you wanted to see some changes to the age.
And that was President Trump at the White House holding a cabinet meeting, his 7th one, and taking reporter questions on a wide range of topics, including the Russia-Ukraine war, crime in D.C., and tariffs. For further analysis on this meeting, we're bringing in Emel Akan, senior White House correspondent for the Epoch Times. Okay, Emel, thank you very much for joining us. So a lot to be said here. The meeting has been going on for a few hours now. Talk to us to start off here, the overall theme or message that you're getting from this meeting.
Yes, as you mentioned, this is the 7th meeting, cabinet meeting, and it's fascinating to watch because it's open press and it's like going on for more than 3 hours. And I'm a little sorry for those reporters who are standing there because they have been standing for 3 hours and watching the cabinet meeting. And then now he's taking questions. It's fascinating to watch that. But the real message of this meeting was labor, the focus on American workers, because it's Labor Day, before the Labor Day, this cabinet meeting. And it was really mentioned during the meeting that actually President himself asked the cabinet members to prepare some speech about how each agency is actually helping the American workers. So each cabinet member talked about their what they accomplished for the American worker, what they have delivered to the blue-collar workers, and what their policies mean going forward for the American workers. So it was fascinating to watch, and it was a very focused meeting on labor, on American workforce, and so it was interesting to see how this was arranged before the Labor Day.
Right. You mentioned this meeting has been going on for 3 hours, and President Trump also commented on the fact that some of the reporters, the camera people, have been holding the equipment for so long, and commenting on perhaps they're very strong. So that aside, what are the current areas in terms of focus for the administration? We've heard President Trump talk about crime in D.C., for example. You're mentioning labor as well, and the topics including the Russia-Ukraine war also came up, and tariffs. What do you think?
Yes, a lot of topics have also come up during this meeting, many national security issues. But what stood out actually for me was the DC, how he is, doing in nation's capital, and this recent measures to crack down on crime and criminals. And so he talked about that. That was an interesting part, that when he asked NTD TV reporter Iris Dow her experience, and it was kind of like interviewing her. So President took the time to ask what happened to Iris and how she was robbed at a gunpoint, and how she dealt with it. So it was an interesting moment when Iris explained her experience, and then he actually tied that to his achievements or measures in DC to control the crime, surge in crime. So that was the main focus. And one thing that really made the headlines is that he is seeking to restore death penalty for people who commit crimes here. Basically, if somebody is killed by someone, that person will be subject to capital punishment. And he mentioned that, and he said that he's seeking that. So it's interesting to hear that as well during this cabinet meeting.
And what did you hear on the topic of tariffs? The Trump administration apparently bringing in billions and billions of dollars.
I think that part is very interesting. Tariff policy, he always liked to highlight that the tariff policy is working, and he's bringing trillions of dollars. He highlighted the CBO projection, which basically an organization that doesn't really always agree with the administration, and they came out with a projection telling that there will be $4 trillion deficit cut. I think this is very important for President to explain American people that tax cuts, the revenue loss, the potential revenue loss from tax cut, will be compensated through tariffs. And so that is very important for his economic policy, and that is very important for his economic messaging, especially before the elections, before the midterms.
And on the topic of the Ukraine war, it's really eye-opening when President Trump put it into perspective that 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people are killed every week, and seeing images as well, the president said, of body parts laying on the battlefield. So can you talk to us about this? Where are we at?
Well, I was at the summit in Alaska. I watched Putin and President Trump's press conference, and then we came to D.C. and he hosted at the White House European leaders and Zelensky, Ukrainian President Zelensky. So it was an interesting week for President Trump. It was a very intense diplomatic effort, and he has given both leaders 15 days, and they need to come together. And as you heard many times from the president, he wants to see those two leaders come together first to hold a bilateral meeting. But we are hearing from the Russian side that there's no agenda, there's no meeting yet, and President will announce his plans after that. And he said that a few days ago. So I think 10 days later, he will come up with a solution. And our expectation is that if he really wants to focus on the peace, or he wants to do something on this, he may turn to sanctions, he may turn to higher tariffs on Russia, but we do not know that yet, because he also talked about Zelensky himself as well. We will see what he will do. He may also do nothing about the war and leave it, just leave this peace effort and see what happens next. So it will be a very interesting 10 days to watch, and his message will be very important during that time.
Right. President Trump expressing some level of frustration, perhaps, that it's hard to get both leaders to meet. Sometimes you get Zelensky, sometimes you get Putin, but it's difficult to have both of them at the same time. So China was also mentioned a few times during the meeting on manufacturing, on tariffs, on COVID, and in terms of the AI race, which also ties in with U.S. energy production. How much of President Trump's policies are tailored to address national security risks relating to communist China?
This is very important for President Trump, especially I like to highlight that he is actually doing a lot of work behind the scenes to basically address this national security threat coming from China when it comes to rare earths and minerals and also magnets. And he also highlighted that yesterday. He knows that China holds a big card. It's a magnets, and they are still not there yet when it comes to lifting their export restrictions. So just want to remind that there was this export control over rare earths, certain rare earth minerals and magnets that are very crucial for technology. They are very important for American manufacturers. China lifted these export restrictions after trade talks, but when I talk to Trump administration officials, they are telling me that they haven't come to the level that they were before. So there's still some restrictions, and they are not happy with it. And manufacturing and supply chains are being impacted. But in the meantime, they are investing heavily to produce more magnets, more minerals in the United States, and they have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to address this national security problem. And this is his main focus at the moment, especially during these negotiations with China.